All right, I'm struggling this morning to get this in the can because I keep doing retakes and retakes. This is When the Night Comes Falling by Howard Blum. Look at that, I'm already stumbling again. This is chapters 20 and 21. I'm going to do the two together because there's not a lot of meat, but yet there is enough that we can get it done in an hour, I'm pretty sure. So again, following through with our book review, we're doing a review of Howard Blum's When the Night Comes Falling. It's not an endorsement of the book. However, I do encourage you, since you're reading so much of his book, to just get a copy of yourself and read along. But that's up to you. I know a lot of you don't want to do that. Let's go ahead and get into, this is the start, chapter 20 and 21 of the forensic scientist story. So again, if you look at the table of contents, there was the first section was all about Michael Koberger. The next one was all about the children, which are the victims, and that's what children sounds so much better because if you can get a lot more sympathy if you call them children. Anyways, that's an aside. The hunter story, that's about the people who are tracking it down, and now we're on the forensic scientist story. And look at how much there is. There's a lot on the forensic scientists, so scientists. So this is going to be interesting. So let's go ahead and get into this chapter 20. Now, Howard Blum likes to have these italicized intros to his chapter. He doesn't really tell us what it is. In this case, it looks like it's Howard Blum's fictional imagination of internal dialogue that's going on in Brian Koberger's mind immediately after the murders. That's what this is. This italicized is Howard Blum's fictionalized depiction of what must be going on in Brian Koberger's mind right after he committed the murders. So you screwed up. You left the knife sheath behind on the bed next to one of the blonde girls. Sloppy. What did that boxer say? All plans go out the window once you're punched in the mouth. Seems that's true for killing too. Once the knife's plunged deep into the flesh, once the blood starts gushing. But it's not a catastrophe. You know what the science can prove and what it can't. Science is smart, but you're smarter. This is the narrative that lots of people are putting out there, that Brian Koberger thought he was so smart, but he made a big mistake. I want to point out, by the way, one of the things that Harsh Reality has pointed out, another YouTuber that I really enjoy, that he hit very, very well, and I'll try to do justice to what he said. Keep in mind, those of you who say Brian Koberger's really, really smart and planned the near perfect murder, but he made a mistake because he thought he was smart, but he just wasn't that smart. Keep in mind that what you're proposing is that the opposite of logic is working. That under duress, when he's in a house and committing murder perhaps for the first time and he's never really seen this happen before and maybe it's not going the way he thought, because a lot of you think there's a narrative that he was surprised by Kaylee when Kaylee woke up and he got mad because she interrupted his killing. That's one of the most common fantasies out there, is that because he got interrupted, that's why he attacked Kaylee more, is because he just wanted to kill one person, but she made him mad because she woke up, and so he attacked her more viciously. All of these things, people I feel like are not being consistent with what they're thinking. What you want to have me believe is that under duress, when he's killing somebody, and maybe it was a fantasy, but now it's a reality, under duress, when it's becoming real and right in his face, he's nearly meticulous. He doesn't track any of the victims' blood out to his car. There's nothing found anywhere tying any of the victims to him somewhere outside of the house. And he only left a knife sheath with a speck of DNA, I say it over and over again, the size of a grain of sand in the house. Nothing else. He was managed to keep all of his other skin cells, all the other parts. He doesn't get cut and nicked and bleed all over the house and mix his blood in the scene. None of that happens under duress, when he's fighting people and being surprised by people, according to the common narrative. And yet you want us to believe that he was just not smart enough to, while planning it out, not buy the murder weapon under a place where you can be traced, not to do all kinds of internet searches about the murder when it could be traced, not being smart enough to not take your own frickin' car to the murder scene because you didn't think that one through, not turning off or not leaving your cell phone at the house so that you can have some kind of alibi that says your phone was at home all night long. Instead, just take that to the crime scene. Like, when he had all the time in the world to think it through, that's when you think thought he was smart, but he wasn't smart. He did all these dumbass things. But in the heat of the moment, when he's in battle and things are happening chaotic, he's damn near perfect. So none of that makes any sense to me. Now, it does to a lot of you, but that is the opposite of what would make sense. I could understand flawless execution or near flawless execution up to the murder, and then things go awry when you go in the house. And yes, you'll say the knife sheath is the going awry. That is ridiculously small amount of going awry, considering all the other things you must think happened in that house, to not have blood tracked out to your car, and all those other things that happened. That's near flawless. But you'll believe you made all the stupid mistakes when you had all the time in the world. Okay, I did beat the hell out of that. I said I wasn't going to do that. I beat the hell out of that. With the national media converging on Moscow and screaming for a solution, with the grieving father of one of the victims constantly voicing his dismay at the lack of progress, and a besieged Chief Fried instructed Payne to send out his team to chase down all leads. So again, there was enormous pressure. Weeks went by and the police had no leads. The public wanted to know why there's no leads. One of the fathers of the victims is being vocally critical in the media about why the police haven't found anybody yet. There was intense pressure. I would argue that one has to ask, at the moment they had any kind of lead whatsoever, did they jump all over it and start making that case because they were getting beat to hell in the media and in the press and by the families about why they haven't found somebody yet? So the second they have something to go on, it's all hands on deck to make that true. Sorry about the dog in the background. My dog seems to have this issue lately of barking during the middle of my recordings, and I haven't found the need to put her in the other room or she can't be heard, so you got to deal with it. Okay, armed with their broad marching orders, the investigators went to work. They focused on classmates of the female victims, boyfriends, ex-boyfriends, frat brothers, even guys that the three women had casually run into on their last night out and about. Every single alibi checked out. Now, I want to point out, I'll make this smaller than I did the previous two takes that didn't make it into the can. The frat idea, that there was frat rivalries and things like this, or the ex-boyfriend idea that the ex-boyfriend was angry that she was leaving him and decided to kill her and by collateral damage the rest of them. Those things I'm getting beat up with on my videos out there by some people who say how disgusting I am of a human being for victim shaming and trying to find other people. Yet the police were doing exactly that. They're following up that did Jack DeCoeur do it. That dog. They're following up the frat brother thing, which would some consider a conspiracy theory, that the frats were somehow doing this kind of thing. The point being is that it's okay for a lot of people, for the law enforcement to go down looking at alternative suspects. But if I look at alternative suspects, as one person said in my comments, I hope that somebody comes and murders your daughters because you're victim shaming, and I can't wait to see what happens when that happens to your daughters. Anyways, that's something I heard just recently. Still not convinced, Fry ordered they examine those stories again. Only when the second confirmation proved accurate was it that he was at last willing to let his team move on. So in other words, this is kind of dealing with the Jack DeCoeur is ruled out. They looked at him, he had an alibi. They looked at him a second time, he had the alibi checked out. They moved on. So that's to assuage any people who are saying, why didn't they look at Jack DeCoeur? They'll tell you this is essentially Blum telling you, oh, they looked at him twice, so don't worry, he's out of the picture. I don't know that that's sufficient for me. I don't think that we can answer that question. But anyways, moving on. A small group of investigators began poking into sororities to dig up provocative dirt. Only once again, so they've looked at frats, now they're looking at sororities, they're looking at every alternative suspect idea, just like I'm doing. The difference is that you say it's okay because it was law enforcement, but I am victim shaming by looking for alternative suspects. I said I wasn't going to beat the hell out of it. I'm still beating the hell out of it. Only once again, none of them had any operational relevance. But then, widening the aperture even further, they began to look at not only co-eds, but women in the region who had been previously charged with assault. And just like that, they had something. A woman from up north with a history of violence who had come down to spend football weekend in Moscow. But there was no intersection point between this suspect and any of the victims. Now, I want to point this out again. I have to beat this a little bit. Some of you just absolutely lose their mind because I suggest that there might be something that we need to look into with a former vet who was shot and killed a month after the murders, who had extreme PTSD and had done violent things in the military. And that I'm disgusting for bringing that up. Yet the police here are looking and find some woman in the area who might have had some violent history in the past and went after investigating her. Why is that okay? Why aren't you all saying, oh my God, you disgusting police officers, you're ruining this woman's life by just looking into anybody that might possibly be involved? Okay, I'm done beating that horse. I wish I could get the dog to stop doing that as well. The inquiries owed as much to wishful thinking as to insightful detective work. And again, so here you go. Law enforcement is following up on alternative suspects. It's wishful thinking. None of it's coming to fruition. Some of you think that my alternative theories that I reviewed are wishful thinking. It's not wishful thinking. these are other possibilities that we should keep our mind open to. Although there was no evidence of sexual assault, that's important to point out. Again, Blum says it in his book. I think that everything that we've seen online so far suggests this. There is no evidence of a sexual assault. Funny, when Dateline comes out, Dateline NBC's latest hit piece, and says that this was a sexual crime. This was a person with sexual fantasies. And they go on to elaborate detail about how Kohberger would have been obsessing about females that he can't have, and it's a sexual fantasy to kill these women. But they will tell you here in this book, and other places have said it over and over again, there is no sexual assault in this case. A great deal of time was spent tracing the whereabouts on November 13th of a dozen sex offenders in both Idaho and Washington, despite the fact that there was no evidence of a sexual assault. Again, they're looking for every possible clue. Again, beating the dead horse. Why is it okay for them to continue to look down alternative suspect things, but if I do it, I'm a horrible, despicable person who needs to have my daughters murdered? All right. Moscow detectives are seeking help from residents. This is a bulletin they put out. They're reaching out to the public now. Moscow detectives are seeking help from residents and businesses within the area of the King Road House, who have video surveillance at their residence or business between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. on Sunday, November 13th, 2022. So there you have early indications that law enforcement believed that the time frame of these murders was 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., a course of 3 hours, right? They've narrowed it down now to a space of about 13 minutes when the Elantra supposedly arrives at the scene and then is seen speeding off after the 4 murders. So originally that was a much wider dragnet of time, a 3-hour gap from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. and they're looking for any surveillance in that time window because that's when they believe that it happened, somewhere in that time window, which does lead to a bunch of the other conspiracy theories on that list that I reviewed recently about whether or not these murders happened earlier in the evening, around 3 in the morning instead of 4 in the morning. So they talk about somebody who's at a gas station and she's looking through video surveillance. She wants to help out, and they've asked for help from people who have video footage. And so she spotted a white car speeding down Highway 8 on the video footage that she's got from her gas station before turning down a side street. The time was close to 4:30 a.m. Oops, is that a problem? Yes. And that was very much in the window of the detectives were exploring because they're looking for 3 to 6 a.m. She's got a white car, speeding down a street at 4:30 in the morning. Later that day, a Moscow police officer appeared at the gas station to confiscate hours of surveillance footage. The quality of the image was taxing. They were flickering, recorded in varying light, and at first glance, all that could be said for sure was that the pixels had captured a fast-moving white car. That's it. It's a fast-moving white car. But it was a puzzle that held their attention. They kept at it, and in the end, they had something. Sure, they were unable to penetrate through the dark shadows enveloping the car's windshield to make out the face behind the wheel, and the license plate was out of the camera's shot. Nevertheless, on November 19th, the team had made an important deduction. The killer had fled in a 2019-2023 white Nissan Sentra. Now, right away, if you're following this case enough, you're going, what the fuck? Like, what do you, they had it. They had him. The killer fled the scene in a 2019-23 white Nissan Sentra. We know that we're looking now for something more like a 2015-16 white Hyundai Elantra, and also not at 4:30 in the morning. So yes, he will point out quickly, law enforcement, were like, we've got him. A white speeding car. We've got him. If that's your detective work. Anyways, point being, so they think they got him. However, the identification of the vehicle had been wrong. I just skipped ahead. The identification of the vehicle had been wrong. Oops, we had the killer. We had a white car speeding around the neighborhood and speeding around somewhere in the vicinity. We had a white car speeding around. We've got him. Oh, it's just a white car speeding around. It's not the right thing. Let's keep looking. Inspired by the service station video, an industrious detective reached out on a hunch to Kane Franchik. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Franchik. This is the person who has the famous Linda Lane footage, I believe. As part of his portfolio, he owned a 6-unit rental complex on Linda Lane, about 0.3 of a mile from where the bodies had been found. And there was a surveillance camera fixed to the building's roof. We've got him. I downloaded the rooftop camera and gave them access to everything from 2 a.m. through noon that Sunday, the 13th, he said. The tapes reconfirmed a good deal of what the investigators had first seen on the gas station video. There it was, the same white car. So this part's super confusing, Howard Blum. You just told us that the white car that they got him on, that was seen speeding away at 4:30 in the morning, that you say was they've got him, turned out to be a completely different car and was not the killer. And now you're saying this guy from the Linda Layden footage has the same white car. Well, if it's the same white car, it's the wrong white car. And this is part of the whole problem, you see. There's a bunch of white cars. There's a bunch of activity in the neighborhood. There was already proven, according to Howard Blum, if you trust Howard Blum, another white car that was not the right car. And now there's this car that they say is the same car. There's a flaw here. And once again, it appeared to be making a breakneck getaway through the dark King Road neighborhood streets at 4:20 a.m. There we go. Now we got a car that's closer to the time frame, so that's got to be it. But they now realized they had a problem. They were no longer so sure the vehicle was a Nissan. From this new angle, it certainly didn't look like one, and now after a while they conceded that they were stumped. They were unable to determine the model of the car, and without any idea of the make of the car, its year, or for that matter, its license plate number, or a look at the driver, they were back to square one. This is another thing you need to all pay attention to. They don't have a video of the driver. They don't know who's in the car. They have grainy footage that they can't tell exactly what it is. They can't see, not only can they not make out what the license plate is, they can't make out if it has a license plate or not. That's officially discussed in court documents. They can't even tell from these videos whether the car has a front license plate. Here, Blum will kind of gloss over that fact by just saying they can't make out the license plate. No, they can't not only make out the license plate, they can't even make out if it had a license plate or not. It's not good footage. You can't see who's in the car. You can't see how many people in the car. You can't identify Kohberger in the car. So make sure you're aware of that when you're saying you're so certain that that's Brian Kohberger in his car that they see over and over again. Chapter 21, and we're going to wrap up here for today's chapters. Prodded by the federal agents working with their team, the stymied Moscow detectives sent copies of their collection of car videos to the forensic specialist at Quantico, at the Quantico-based unit. So now Moscow's turning over all the surveillance footage of the car, suspect vehicle 1, it will infamously call it later. They're turning it over to the FBI at Quantico. And right away, the expensive software worked like a charm. So they got software that's going to analyze at a higher level of detail the footage, the raw footage that they can't get shit from in Moscow. So the FBI is using their special software, or more precisely, 3 charms. The FBI forensic examiners first deduced that suspect vehicle 1, the white car caught on multiple cameras leaving the crime scene, was a 2011 to 2013 white Hyundai Elantra. Again, you know, oops, that's a problem because it wasn't Kohberger didn't drive a 2011 to 2013 car. Oops, again. So before it was a Nissan Sentra. Oops, 2019 to something. Oops, wrong time. Now it's a white Hyundai Elantra 2011 to 13. Oops, that's not the right thing. We'll fix that later. When we find out who Kohberger is, we'll fix that later. However, upon further review, they would later decide the mysterious Hyundai might very well be a 2011 to 2016 vehicle. And again, following the case, if you follow the case, when and how they determined that they needed to widen that gap, that's all under speculation. When did they widen the gap? Was it after they already knew who they were looking for, Brian Kohberger, and they knew that his car was a higher year, so they had to widen the gap to say it's the same car? There's some speculation, there's some debate about that, because there is some indication that they changed it before they knew Brian Kohberger, but just keep in mind, when they widened the gap to include Brian Kohberger's year is important to the story. All right. Then, with the passage of even more time, as the examiners continued to pore over the additional images of the car, or image of the car, consistent with the Hyundai near the murder scene, they definitely narrowed down their analysis. It was a 2014 to 2016. Okay, now they're getting it closer. After further analysis, it's consistent with Brian Kohberger's car. I mean, with a 2014 to 2016 Elantra. In all of the inventive manipulation of pixels and the video footage of suspect vehicle 1, the Bureau's techies still couldn't come up with a legible shot of a license plate. In fact, they can't even get the image of whether it has a license plate. Anyways, nor was there a single legible image of the driver. In fact, they can't tell if there's 3, 5, 10 people in the car. Anyways, all they could decipher was a dark, murky shadow hovering over the steering wheel. Okay, so that is more detail than I even thought they had. I didn't think they had anything originally. Now Blum is telling us they got one kind of like dark shadowy figure hovering over a steering wheel. You cannot identify it's Brian Koberger, and you can't identify who else might be in the car. They might have a murky, shadowy figure of somebody driving, because you know there has to be a driver. The car's not driving itself. Well, I guess maybe if he had a Tesla. But anyways, another large obstacle, there was 22,000 Hyundais in the region that matched the search criteria. So keep this in mind. They're looking for a white Hyundai Elantra between a narrow set of years. And that still nets them 22,000 Hyundais that match that description. I have to presume that means a white Elantra between 2011 to 2016. And there's 22,000 of those cars. One of which apparently we saw speeding away that was identified as a Nissan Sentra that turned out to not be the right car. There is an enormous amount of cars. This is a very common car. So again, just keep that in mind, all you people who are convinced. They see Brian Koberger's car 20-something times in the area. It's on footage. Duh, it's got to be the guy. Well, is it his or one of other 22,000 vehicles that match the vehicle's description in that area? One of the 22,000 Hyundais had very likely been driven by the killer. Great. So now that law enforcement is like, we got it narrowed down to 22,000 people. One of them's got to be the killer. By the way, one of them's got to be the killer? We don't know. This is what kills me. Blum's already said, law enforcement has determined the car that you see speeding around the neighborhood at that time has to be the killer. How do we know they didn't go on foot? How do we know the killer wasn't just living next door and walked over, killed people, and walked back to their house? Why is it that a speeding car means it has to be the killer's car? That fundamentally already is a flaw in logic. I don't know if you follow that, what I'm saying. But saying that a car speeding around the area between the gap means that it has to be the killer's car. That means you know for sure the killer came in a car and left in a car. But I digress. Detectives are interested in speaking with the occupants of a white 2011. So they sent out this notice, right? Be on the lookout, a bolo in cop speak, as they say. Detectives are interested in speaking with the occupant of a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra with an unknown license plate. Well, that's a problem because he doesn't have a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. Investigators believe the occupant of this vehicle may have critical information to share regarding the Idaho student murder case. Yet there was a problem, Blum says, with the bolo. The Moscow authorities had disseminated the FBI's initial inaccurate determination of the Hyundai's year. So the FBI came back. These guys are the top-notch investigators. FBI came back with 2011 to 2013, and they, the Moscow police, disseminated the FBI top investigators inaccurate information that it was a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. So in time, they would correct this error, but by then the damage would have already been done. Anyways, Brian Koberger, a grad student living in a university apartment compound on Northeast Valley Road, owned a 2015 White Elantra. That must mean he's guilty. So this was basically, you're talking about an officer, Daniel Tango, who basically says, hey, I remembered there's this guy in the neighborhood who has a 2015 White Elantra. He goes over and he spotlights this car. Like, right now that makes no sense. Again, there's 22,000 Hyundai White Elantras in the area, and a cop comes up with the idea, hey, I think I know a guy who has a White Elantra, a 2015 Elantra. So he goes over and he spotlights it and gets an image. We're on to something. Here's a White Elantra. What the dog? What with the dog? One of 22,000 cars in the area. Dutifully, Tango passed the baton to his late-night patrol sergeant, Curtis Whitman. Whitman was an old guard campus cop, someone who had been deeply shaken by the decertification of a fellow officer for allegedly extorting sex from a co-ed in exchange for dropping an arrest for public intoxication. Stop for a moment. I want to beat this. All right, the point that I want to make about this is all of you people who seem to have a reluctance to think that police officers do things inappropriate. I want you not to miss this. This officer, just in passing, is having some problems because he was deeply shaken, this officer. It's a story that doesn't relate to Brian Koberger, but it relates to my analysis of Brian Koberger, because I want you to catch law enforcement. These people are not above reproach. Whitman was an old guard campus cop, someone who had been deeply shaken by the decertification of a fellow officer for allegedly extorting sex from a co-ed in exchange for dropping an arrest for public intoxication. So these are police officers on a college campus finding drunk college girls and be like, well, you know, if you do something for me, I can probably look the other way on this public intoxication arrest. If that doesn't disgust you, it should, and there's something wrong, in my opinion. And it also, I want to point out for you people who seem to think that law enforcement should be above reproach. Law enforcement does shit tactics like this all the time. Yes, there are amazing good cops. I'm on a mini rant. It's going to be short. I'm on a mini rant. Yes, there are plenty of good cops, but there are plenty of bad cops who will extort college girls who are drunk for sex in exchange for letting them off for a public intoxication thing. How disgusting is this? Oh, you're a drunk female? Hey, you know what? Give me a little sum, and we'll look the other way on that thing. It's disgusting, and that's not something that only happens once in a blue moon, in my opinion. Cops are people too. Cops do, and when you have power, you're gonna do shitty shit from time to time. So again, I'm beating the dead horse, as I love to do, but I just want to point out to you that even in passing, we have cops that would be interested in females. And there's a conspiracy theory. Oh my God, devil's advocate, you sick bastard, for suggesting that a police officer was obsessed with Kaylee, or that he inappropriately acted in certain ways when he came on a noise complaint and took a picture of her driver's license. That's disgusting conspiracy thing. Cops don't do that kind of shit. Well, maybe some cops will have a girl have sex with them to avoid getting a ticket for public intoxication. But I'm an asshole. All right. Yeah, I take it personally sometimes. Tango now had a plate number to go on with the car. So Tango goes over and, hey, I think I remember this guy who has a White Elantra on campus. I'm going to go take a photo of this car. So now that he has a license plate to go with, because he remembers a guy of 22,000 people that has a White Elantra and takes a picture, he quickly forwards that intelligence to Moscow. That's intelligence? That's intelligence. Hey, I know a guy on campus who has a White Elantra. I'm going to go take a picture of it, and I'm going to take this great intelligence, and I'm going to send it to Moscow Police Department. But the team at the headquarters showed no interest. The information from the WSU cop was cataloged and then swiftly filed away. The Bolo had requested the authorities search for a 2011 to 2013 white Hyundai Elantra. This one was a 2015, so they're not interested. All right. Anyways. The team, in a sudden burst of inspiration, so they have another car to look for. The team, in a sudden burst of inspiration, had landed a new, intriguing idea. Kaylee Gonzalez had recently purchased a silver gray Range Rover. Perhaps, they wondered, the pretty blonde had caught the malicious attention of one of the vehicle's previous owners. Over several intensive days, believing that they were finally onto something, the detectives tried to locate all the names listed on the car's registration. Now listen to this. When they traveled up north to interview an individual with previous ties to the car, he at once turned belligerent. It didn't sit well with him that, by implication at least, he was being accused of 4 horrific murders. Tempers, according to one knowledgeable account, erupted, and frustrated without any other leads to gnaw at, the officers gave it as good as they got. But in the end, like all others tied to the Range Rover, it became clear that he was innocent, and they were forced to apologize. Now, stop for a moment. People who are beating my ass for looking into alternative suspects. It's the same thing law enforcement is doing. They're harassing someone. You would say, you son of a bitch, you are accusing innocent people. Yeah, this guy's pissed off about it too. They come to him because maybe somebody who bought, or that Kaylee bought the Range Rover from, or maybe a previous owner of the Range Rover is connected to this. You would call that, if I did that shit, you would call that a wild ass conspiracy theory, and you'd be all, my God, devil's advocate, you're so reaching. You're going to look at the previous owner of the Range Rider. What the heck? Police can do it, and they can interrogate this guy, and they gave it as good as they got. He's like, fuck off. Like, you're accusing me of murdering 4 people or being connected with it, and you're like, hey, you need to answer for yourself. And then they had to apologize. Well, shit, maybe we shouldn't have done that. Again, law enforcement, you guys are going to slide a lot of it. Again, when I say you guys, it's not you watching this video. Because if you're watching this video this far into it, you're on my side probably more than not. So it's kind of rhetorically towards you people out there who will bust my nuts for being accusing innocent people and viciously coming up with all these wild theories. That's what the police are doing. It's okay for them, I guess, right? All right. They had no idea they had already received the key necessary to unlock this case. That's Kohberger's license plate. And that it had been stored away in one of their team's computer files, forgotten, ignored. I think what they're going to point out is that Brian Kohberger had previously been stopped, so he was in their database. That license plate was in the database, but because they weren't looking for 2015, they didn't search the database. And had they known that that car had been stopped before, they would have the killer. Shoddy, in my opinion. Now, this is the end of chapter 20 and 21. We will continue on with this series. I'll make a quick apology for the rants that I made today. I'm trying to clean it up, but man, yeah, I'm a little sore. I've had some really nasty comments coming into my feed. I've repeated it. Some really nasty comments. So, chapter 20 and 21, the white Hyundai Elantra being reviewed. Let me hit the key points one more time. The video footage doesn't show the license plate. They can't even tell if it had a license plate. They don't know how many people are in the car. They can't tell it's his car. They can't tell he's in the car. They literally have made the jump in logic that if a white car is seen speeding around the neighborhood, it must be the killer, without considering that maybe the killer didn't come in a car, maybe, and that there's 22,000 white cars in the neighborhood, including other white cars driving around by their own admission at the same time. But yet, we are going to now go to court with them saying, see this one video footage? That's suspect vehicle 1. And now this other one on a different video footage, that's another white car speeding by that you can't identify. That's suspect vehicle 1. And this other white car speeding by on a different camera that you can't tell it's the same car, that's suspect vehicle 1. They're playing shell games, people. So this is super, super circumstantial evidence. Those of you who are out there in the community, and again, if you're watching this video, you're probably not, I'm not speaking to the right people. If you're out there in the community and you're convinced the white Hyundai Elantra, Brian Kohberger, is seen on camera driving around the neighborhood, that is not true. Brian Kohberger is not seen. They've never had an image of Brian Kohberger in his car driving around the neighborhood. They have images of white cars, of which it might be a Hyundai Elantra, one of 21,000 or 22,000 in the area at the thing. All of it is really suspicious. And again, but they got his cell phone pinging. We're going to get into all of that, I'm sure, even coming up in the chapters ahead. I'm going to trust Howard Blum is going to touch on that cell phone data. So let's see where that goes coming up soon.